All right, I do believe we're live. My name is Jamie J, and this is a special edition of Live with Bottleneck. Normally, we do it Wednesday afternoon at 2 p.m. Central, but I couldn't wait to get the news out. A good friend of mine, Elaine Pofeldt, I'm so excited to talk to you about her new book and what she's doing. She's an incredible person, so stay tuned. I'll be back in about 38 seconds, and we'll kick this thing off, and I'll introduce you to the wonderfully talented and amazing Elaine Pofeldt. So bear with us. Let's get going. Hello there. Welcome to Live with Bottleneck, this special edition of Live with Bottleneck, where we help stop the bottleneck in your business and in your life. I am so excited to introduce you to Elaine Pofeldt today. Elaine, we're going to be talking about the characteristics of tiny businesses that make seven figures. Of course, with Elaine Pofeldt, she's the author of Tiny Business, Big Money, and the $1 Million One-Person Business. And this is Thursday, 9 a.m., February 17th. If you're watching this now, feel free to go to Facebook. If you're watching from Facebook, and go to streamyard.com/Facebook to make sure that we can get your comments here. And if you want to chat, go ahead and chat away. If you're watching this in evergreen mode, you're following up later, please feel free to comment, whether you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube, and we'll make sure to get back to you or get Elaine to address any of those questions. I'll forward them along to her as well. But yeah, we'll go ahead and get started today. Elaine is an independent journalist who specializes in small business and entrepreneurship. She's the author of Tiny Business, Big Money for W.W. Norton and Company. A look at how seven-figure businesses with small teams, sound familiar, are reinventing the small business landscape, and the $1 Million One-Person Business, a guide to how solopreneurs are breaking $1 million in revenue in business with no employees except the owners. Her work has appeared in Fortune, Money, CNBC, Inc., Forbes, Crain's, New York Business, and many other business publications. She's absolutely amazing. She has contributed to the Economist Intelligence Unit. She is also a ghostwriter and collaborative editor. As a senior editor at Fortune Small Business, where she worked for 8 years, Elaine was twice nominated for the National Magazine Award for her features and ran the magazine's annual business plan competition. Elaine graduated from Yale University with a BA in English. She lives in New Jersey with her husband and their 4 children. In her free time, she enjoys taekwondo, yoga, and long walks. So without any further ado, please allow me to introduce you to the one and only Elaine Pofeldt. Hi, Elaine.
Thank you so much, Jamie. It's so great to be back.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much. I know you're tuning in live from your very own car studio, and I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Surprised how much business I do from my Ford Flex, but yes, I am.
Well, that's fantastic. You worked so hard on your book. I remember when you started writing it, and I remember all the deadlines, and we were talking about. I was so excited because I had just published a book at the same time, so I was able to relate with a lot of the deadlines and all that stuff that was going on. Now it's out, and you've been busy talking about this, and I wonder if maybe you can share a little bit about who you are and what you're doing and what you've been up to.
Sure, that sounds great, Jamie. Well, you gave a great intro. Thank you. And this book picks up where the $1 Million One-Person Business left off. The $1 Million One-Person Business looked at businesses that were breaking 7 figures with nobody on payroll. And these businesses have made the transition to adding payrolled employees or building an extended team of contractors, similar to the business model that I believe you're still using. And what I look at are how do they make that transition? Because a lot of people join this type of tiny business world to have independence, but once you start adding people, you can become a bottleneck, as you know. And so, how do you put the processes and procedures in place? How do you manage the team while keeping your freedom? That's what I look at. There are almost 60 case studies in the book of entrepreneurs who have made this transition, and looking at how did they find their idea, how did they test it, how did they find the right people, etc. So I'll stop there, but that's basically what it's about.
Well, thank you again. You've done so much research in this, and boy, how long have we? I think it's probably been 3 or 4 years that we've known one another, and you've done so much in such a short amount of time. One of the things that I really, really appreciate about your work is that you go into the details of highlighting these people, these owners, these individuals that have struggled, but then finally found a way to make their businesses work, and become very lucrative, without the traditional means that most people would understand business growth as it usually is. And I wonder, what are some of the biggest things that this book, that you wrote, what can people take away from this book? You said case studies, but what are some of the key things they can take away from this book?
Well, one thing is that there are a lot of different types of businesses that don't seem innovative necessarily, where you can build a tiny business that makes big money. A lot of people feel like, oh, I'm not Elon Musk dreaming up the next SpaceX, so therefore I can't even be an entrepreneur. But the truth is, there are people running manufacturing businesses that make widgets from their living room that are bringing several $1 million a year with a very tiny team. One example of this is Jeffrey Stern. He's in his 60s, and he makes the little voice boxes for Build-A-Bear Workshop. It's a birthday party place that a lot of shopping malls have, and it's about a $4 million business. He's alternated between having employees and having contractors over the years, so he's basically able to be a manufacturer without owning the means of production, right? So it's available to anybody. And you mentioned research, and one of the things that I did with this book, I love census data on small businesses. I'm very geeky about it, and um, I worked with my team. I have a 4-person team, also known as my kids, and they're very helpful in different ways. My older 2 twins are they're girls who are really good in math, and so they help me program these spreadsheets to figure out the average revenue minus the average payroll for every industrial code in America. And then we ranked them by which ones had the most money left over. And we organized it according to less than 4 employees, 5 to 9 employees, and 10 to 19 employees, because people have different capital requirements at those levels. Like, to start with a 0 to 4 employee business doesn't take a lot of money, but if the business really, the price of entry is having 19 employees, then you might not be able to do that right off the bat. So this helps people with smaller budgets. And what was so interesting was which ones turned out top of the list. These are not necessarily the ones I would recommend that people pursue, and you'll know why in a second. I did some analysis based on the interviews to come up with the final categories. But for instance, in 0 to 4 employees, the top one was casinos. I didn't even know you could run a casino with less than 4 employees, but I did some digging around, and apparently there are these like little gas station casinos that people run. That's not going to be the one that I recommend because it's very specialized. The second one was creamery butter, and it turns out that butter creameries are heavily automated, and there are quite a few of these butter creameries with very small teams, and a lot of money is left over. Now, the thing I should say is payroll is the biggest cost in a lot of businesses, but it is not the only cost. So, for instance, you might need real estate, which could be very costly. So, what I encourage people to do is look, the NYU Stern School of Business publishes data on the average profits for common industries, look at information like that, and also look at biz buy sell and other marketplaces for businesses where you see more of the financial data of the types of businesses that interest you, so you know what the profit potential really is. But what this told me, I think the big takeaway was that seemingly boring businesses can be an avenue for tremendous entrepreneurial creativity. And there were businesses that I thought you would never believe how creative you could be. One entrepreneur, Kelly Cudworth, took over an office supply store that was complete with salespeople, who visited local businesses that was in his family. And he streamlined it and used kind of the Tim Ferriss approach to automating almost everything. And he made it completely online and he grew it incredibly. He's an example of, most people don't necessarily want to go into the office supply business, but he's doing amazingly well with it. So sometimes just looking around you to basic needs that people need can be the ticket to building one of these businesses. I think, these are folks that make it happen for themselves. These are everyday people. They generally did not tap into family money or venture capital to start these businesses or grow them. They had to come up with the funds themselves. But what was so encouraging to me was they did it. Maybe they were married or in a relationship and they lived on one person's income, or they saved money from their job, or they just lived cheaply and used what was left over to fund the business. And it told me that this is open to everyone who has a desire to make it happen. You don't have to have a ton of money to build a 7-figure business, because you can then fund it through cash flow, which is beautiful, right? Because then you have a very sustainable business.
It sounds eerily familiar. Yes, it's difficult, I think, to do something like that. I guess you would consider it grassroots level, kind of marketing, and just doing it all yourself. There's something rewarding about that, but it does, I think, take a special character to do something like that, because it's a little scary going out on your own and venturing out and not having that security of say maybe a more traditional corporate job or a more traditional job that you have, going out on your own without having that capital and just kind of reinvesting everything. We spent 2021, like, it was a little challenging, but we took every single bit of profits we possibly made and reinvested it back into the company. And we're super excited about the results. So we're reaping the benefits now, actually. And it's just a blast. I have a question from Gordon McDougall. He said, are you seeing more people who are transitioning because of the Great Resignation?
Gordon, absolutely. Yes, I saw statistics that I think 5 million people registered new businesses last year, and it was up from about 2 million a few years back, like less than 5 years ago. I think people are really rethinking everything in their life right now. They've had a lot of time to think. And I also think there's a phenomenon where if you work out in any way, like, doing push-ups or something like that, there's a point where you reach exhaustion. And people are just exhausted. And if there was something very stressful about their job, or they just were bored doing it, they're asking themselves, why should I continue? Or they literally don't have it in them to continue. They're just reaching their breaking point. But I think that's creative destruction, right? People will do something else to fill that time because they have to make a living. And I think they'll make decisions that are much more oriented towards what they love. And I think also with COVID, unfortunately, it was a good reminder for all of us that tomorrow is promised to no one. Not to be overly morbid, but we did lose a lot of people. And I think people say, no time like the present. I'm going to use the moment. I have the moment. Let me start a business one step at a time. Interestingly, just to backtrack, Jamie, to your point about how challenging it really is, a lot of these folks do have nerves of steel. It is a little different. And I run a business too, so I know this. Like in a pandemic, when all of a sudden things go off a cliff suddenly, it's a little different than being in a job where the boss has to worry about it because you are the boss. And if no money is coming in or sales are not happening, you got to hustle. And I do think you need to cultivate your inner mojo. Everybody has inner strength and resilience. One thing I did was survey these entrepreneurs about their best practices. And I found that 88% exercise, and the top exercise was yoga. And I'm a big yoga student. I go every morning at 5:45. And I think that doing those kind of mind body practices, or like hockey, like someone I know, uh, it's good for your mindset, because it it teaches you things that maybe you can't learn from listening to podcasts about business, just about showing up and patience and how the breakthroughs happen unexpectedly, and just being still, like not letting your mind run away with you with anxiety when you just lost $30,000 worth of business in one day because of the pandemic or whatever just happened. It If you're in it for the long haul, you have to cultivate those things, because otherwise the ups and downs will really get to you. And especially as you start scaling up to the point where you have a substantial size team like Jamie does, those people are depending on you. So you have to find a way to keep yourself calm so you can do creative work and your best work. Part of it is also having a support group of other people living this lifestyle, because I think one thing we saw was during the pandemic, some people have very steady jobs, like public employees, so they weren't going to lose their salary. Other people in the eat what you kill crowd, like us, we, we we had a different situation. So you have to prepare yourself for that by living below your means a little bit, keeping savings, doing things to make sure you have financial stability and you have some capital. Maybe you can invest in a new line of business, but you have to have a little bit of money to do it, or else you're going to be operating from scarcity and panic. And nobody does their best work that way. So a lot of it is developing your mental strength. But I do think if you just think about the human spirit and all the different ways that it prevails, we all have it in us. If we want to run a business, it's not for everybody, but for people that do have the desire, you can definitely cultivate it and make it stronger.
I totally agree 100%. And as you said, to backtrack just a little bit, you mentioned hockey. Yes, I play hockey, and we every Friday at 11 o'clock, my wife and I go. That's how we met. It was on the ice. It was a love story, a nice hockey love story. It's fantastic. But we take some time away from the business and we go and play hockey. And what we found is when we play hockey, we have big smiles on our face. No matter what happened that week, whether it was a great week or a challenging week, we've found that we could redirect our attention and just focus on skating and playing and shooting the puck around and passing and getting the exercise. And what a wonderful release that is. It's fantastic. I don't think about anything else other than being there, enjoying the time with the other people that we were on the rink. It's just a nice little break. And as crazy as it sounds, someone says, "Hey, can I meet you at 11 o'clock on Friday?" It's always 100% no, because I consider that one of my most important appointments of the week, in order to keep this creativity flowing. I wonder if maybe you can talk to this for a second as I kind of digress back into our conversation. One of the biggest challenges that I've experienced, and I've heard from a lot of other people when they're growing these one-person businesses or small businesses that are starting to do really good revenue, is that they have a hard time disseminating information or delegating tasks. And I think that really clogs up their creativity. What I think a lot of the people that you've interviewed and talked to have done is they found a way to take what's in their head and kind of get that out of their head to open up some creativity. I wonder if maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit. And if it sounds confusing to you, I'm happy to elaborate. But do
No,
you
I know
have
what you mean.
anything that you can talk about?
Well, I think what you're doing with hockey, it's like an equivalent to meditation, because you can't think about anything else. Like, I've never been good at sitting and chanting or things like that, but I go to hot yoga and it's so difficult. I can't even think about anything else. And then when you come back out, all of a sudden you have new solutions in your head to things that were really stressing you out. And you've had a break from your own voice in your head. steering you wrong, right? Like when you start getting anxious, like, well, someone pays you an invoice late, and then you're like, my whole business is failing, blah, blah, and but then you're like doing your thing, and you let that go, and you realize you get some perspective, really. And so I encourage people to do whatever is your form of meditation. It could be, walking around a big city, with horns honking, whatever you get freed from your thoughts by, I think is a valid way to get away. I did notice a lot of these entrepreneurs are very careful about their calendar. And when you said, Jamie, about that 11 a.m. appointment, it's unbreakable. And that's when I think you start to be able to build a sustainable business, when you realize you are the most precious resource of the business. Without you, I mean, you've put all the systems in place so that it can function without you, but you're the visionary and you're the heart and soul and spirit of the business. So if you're breaking down from stress and you're a basket case, living on Red Bull and going crazy, you can't really lead the way that you need to. And I say lead with like a lowercase l, because like we think of leadership as like Jack Welch or that kind of thing, and most of us don't want to be like that. That's like a big corporate job kind of leadership. But when you're on a small team, it's more informal, it's more real, but you still have to bring your best self and bring energy and passion and a spirit of fun. And if you're ground down to a nub, you won't have it. So I think that's really important. So I see people doing different things. Some of them really thrive on R&D, and maybe they take Fridays to do R&D, and they don't take any client calls. They've had you have a whole book, quit repeating yourself, right? To help people put the processes in place so they have some space. Some people do things like daddy-daughter day. It depends on the person, but they create space so that they can almost connect to the person that they were when they were a child, that creative self that isn't bogged down with all the stuff that bogs us down. And that's why they have the vision, I think, because everybody has vision, but why do some people release it and other people never do that? I think it's because they don't allow space in their life sometimes, or they can't time.
Yes, I agree with that. I think there's a lot of opportunity right now. I guess I should say there's a lot of opportunity all the time. You just have to find the right space. But especially now, in my opinion, people have become understanding of being able to do something remotely, away from an office environment. A lot of, as you said earlier, a lot of people had extra time because of this pandemic. And for me, if you look at the silver lining of what the pandemic has offered to people, a lot of people, I think, and to your point, more people are becoming entrepreneurs, more businesses that are starting up right now. And I think that's because people have, over the course of the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, I would guess, March of 2020, I think, is kind of when all of this started kicking in. People have found a way to replace their current income, and now they're kind of going out on their own. They're excited about it. One of the concerns that I have is people that are leaving the workforce right now. For those that are remaining, are now doing the work of 1, 2, 3, 4 roles. And I'm wondering what, if you, in your conversations with the people that you've talked with, have they been hiring people that have left these organizations because of burnout and they're looking for something to reinvigorate them?
I think they've actually actively recruited through their networks in many cases long before they need the position filled. That's what I found. There's one business, a jewelry business, that they hired a data scientist because they sell on Amazon. And that's not a position that you can just easily fill. How many data scientists are there really? So they were thinking about it a long time ahead, and understanding what are the ideal characteristics of a data scientist who sells jewelry, and that sort of thing. I think that's definitely a good workforce to tap into, the people that are looking for purpose. The labor shortage is a real challenge for businesses that are starting to scale, by adding their first couple of employees, especially if it is a small business, because maybe you cannot offer the same benefits as Google or the same salaries. But the two fellows that run that business, it's called Pavoi, Pavoi, said that not everybody wants that. Some people want flexibility, or they like a smaller environment or friendlier environment, and they will gladly leave other places that don't offer it. I think it's important not to underestimate the stress that a lot of people are still under with the pandemic. And we have a lot of big companies saying, back to work, or everybody has to have a vaccine, or different rules that maybe work for a lot of people, but don't work for everyone who works there. And there are people that are going to leave because it's too stressful. I know different parts of the country, the schools are really not fully operational still. And so when you're a working parent, there are a lot of inconveniences that you're dealing with that it should technically be over by now, right? And the employer thinks that, but meanwhile, it's like every day I have an issue where I think I can do a 3 o'clock appointment because I should be able to. The school is 5 minutes from my house, but there have been problems with the school parking lot because of staffing shortages, I think. So it takes forever to get out of there. Sometimes I'm there for like 40 minutes every day. It's cutting into my work time, and it's hard to explain that to people. So then I finally just canceled that hour, but I work for myself. But what if you work for a job and there's a 3 o'clock meeting and your employer does not understand you have to take it from the carpool lane, or and you can't get a babysitter because nobody will go in a car with your child during the end of the pandemic. I mean, there's a lot of things people are dealing with that I don't think employers fully realize, or they just think, oh, the person should be able to cope. But all the resources to cope are not available when you can't hire the help that you need, and maybe some employees cannot afford it. They can't afford a babysitter for extra time on what they earn. So I think that employers that are much more cognizant of that will be in a better position to not only attract people, but retain them. And it's not only children, it's also, there's some workers that have health concerns and that might be more vulnerable, and they might really have a hesitation to come into the office for the next year, but maybe they're really good at what they do. So like, you have a remote team, you know how effective they can be, but some employers prefer everybody in the office because of culture, but maybe you have to make some exceptions if you're going to be fully staffed and say, well, this person has diabetes, or it's really actually none of the employer's business what the reason is. If they have a health concern and they can't come in, they don't want to, but they're great, why don't we just give them a chance and just try to work around that? Those employers who do that will not have a staffing shortage.
I agree. I think that it says a lot about the culture in a company, and that's one of our things here. We want to make sure that as we grow, we still maintain the mentality of a small business. Does that make sense? Like we want to,
It does.
yeah, we want to make sure that we're taking care of people, and we've had people on our team that've been offered higher salaries to go elsewhere, and they've declined, and it's been a blessing. That just shows that there can be a really strong and good culture for everyone involved, even though we're working remotely. And really quick, I wanted to say Steve Ferreira dropped by, and he says, we love
Steve.
tiny business, big money. Bestseller for sure.
Well, that means a lot coming from a best-selling author whose book was on a billboard in Times Square. Thank you.
Yeah, holy cow. And he was so kind. He even popped up your link to Amazon there. So that's going to be exciting. People can go to that link to buy your book. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, Steve. Yeah, that's crazy.
Thank you so much, Steve. And Steve has a really great book. One of the hot areas, the tiny.
What was that? You broke up.
He has a book about B2B commerce, which I think, and that's one of the hot areas. Oh, that is one of the hot areas that I saw in the census research that is a real must read for people in that space.
Well, especially with the challenges that we had with the shipping and all of that, he was in his element there for a while. Still is, I guess.
Yeah,
well, I wonder
the world of the supply chain you all know about right now.
Yes. So we're getting towards the end where I want to be mindful of your time, especially since you're in your car studio, so that you can get comfortable and get on your way there. I wonder if if you want to share with us maybe how people can reach out to you, or how they can get a hold of you, or go buy your book to learn more about you.
Well, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter, and under my full name. Please feel free to write to me. I do write back. It makes me a better journalist to know what you're thinking about. The book here, I have my little show and tell in my car / office. Actually, I live in my car, Jamie. No, just kidding. But, you can order it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, major bookstores. And please let me know what you think. Are there any unanswered questions? That way I'll know what to research for my next book.
That's fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much for taking your time. It's always such an honor just to be able to chat with you. I always learn so much. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap?
My one last message to everybody is, what I took away is these folks keep showing up. I think that's the basic rule for building business success. If you keep showing up, you will learn things that you can then build on and apply. And it's easy to put off working on your business, but just like yoga or hockey or anything else that requires consistent practice, it's amazing how exponential the gains can be once you start doing that. If it's 3 times a week or 4 times a week. And that's what these folks did, even when it was hard. And now they have these amazing businesses and really great lifestyles. So I really encourage you to show up for yourself as much as you can. And Jamie, it's been an honor to be here. You are such an expert on this whole trend. And I really appreciate being here.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you.
By the way, I made this website, my son Robert, who's 11, that you're scrolling through. My tiny team, they're very conveniently located in my house, and he's my web guy.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Well, Elaine, thank you so much. Do you have just 1 second? And I'll go ahead and wrap up here.
Sure. Yes.
All right. Thank you. Okay, coming live from the mobile studio of Elaine Pofeldt. Really appreciate you tuning in. We had a wonderful conversation. Elaine is a wonderful friend, a wonderful person, and she's the author of Tiny Business, Big Money, and the $1 Million One-Person Business. If you go to elainepofeldt.com, you can see all the different links where you can purchase the book. I cannot recommend enough. If you're looking at ways that other people have successfully navigated the troubling waters of tiny businesses with little team, 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 20, or 10 to 19. If that sounds like something you're interested in and you're just not quite finding your way through, highly encourage you to go check out elainepofeldt.com. Elaine is fantastic. Again, this has been a special edition of Live with Bottleneck, where we talked about the characteristics of tiny businesses that make 7 figures. And so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Right before we wrap up today, I do want to take a quick moment to share, if you like this video, please go check us out at learn how you can break through the bottleneck in your business and in your life today by going to bottleneck.online/BTV. You can learn more about what we're doing there. I am the author of Quit Repeating Yourself: How Today's Leaders Are Using Systems and Processes to Grow Their Business the Right Way. And it really helps you out strategizing everything from creating systems, how to hire correctly, things like that. If you missed the previous episode, I talked with David Chrysler. He's an operations consultant of the Chrysler Club. And we talked about reclaiming your life to grow your business. That was a really great conversation. I had a lot of fun with it. Coming up next, I'm going to be talking to Scott Novus. He's the CEO and founder of Bravos Esports. And that's coming up Wednesday, March 2nd at 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. Coming soon to your earbuds, we're going to be talking about teaching team building and communication through video games. Interesting. You should tune in for that one. Again, my name is Jamie J. I'm the CEO and founder of Bottleneck Distant Assistants and the host of Live with Bottleneck. This has been a special presentation talking here with Elaine Pofeldt, the characteristics of tiny businesses that make seven figures. Please go check and learn more about Elaine at elainepofeldt.com. And without any further ado, we'll go ahead and wrap today. Remember, create your own ripple. Have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you again soon.